Good morning. Okay, on this video, I'm going to show you how to batch process in Camera Raw. I have a hard time doing these tutorials because, contrary to popular belief, I don't love the sound of my own voice, and it's also hard to have a one-sided conversation. I expect people to give me feedback, so I apologize for the quality of this tutorial, but hopefully it will show you what you need to learn. So I have a folder pulled up of a session that I'm working on. And I have a few landscapes here to begin with. You can see the color difference between this photo and this one. This one's quite warm, and that one's got the cooler tones. I'm actually not working on those ones, but what I want to do is scroll over until I find a batch of photos that are fairly similar. So the following 6 photos were taken in the same location with approximately the same lighting. The model was in the same area. So they're basically the same picture. Over here, these next 3 to 6 are approximately the same location with the same lighting, etc. So when I do batch processing, I wouldn't choose pictures from over here along with pictures from this location because the lighting is entirely different. The whole situation was different. So I try just to do a few at a time. It keeps from making mistakes and changes on photos that I don't intend to. So for now, I'm going to select my first photo. If I hold down Shift and click on the last photo that I would like to use, it will select them all. So that again is Shift and click on the last photo in the series. Another alternative to that is to click on each individual picture that you want by holding down Ctrl and clicking on each picture that you want to pick up in that series. You would use that if you don't want to pull in all 6 photos at once, or if you have a few from different areas in your shoot that you'd like to pull in at the same time. So Control click will choose individual photos. Shift click will select all the photos in that particular series. So from there, when my photos are selected, I will double click and it will bring up all 6 photos in Camera Raw. From this point on, as long as you have all of your photos selected, so on the top left you have to click Select All to make sure all 6 photos are highlighted. Whatever changes you make on the right-hand column will be made to all 6 photos. Okay. If you ever have a problem in that area, make sure that you don't accidentally have one photo selected. You want to make sure that you've done Select All. So I've actually already gone through and done these changes, but I'll show you again just for the sake of the tutorial. I do have a little bit of blown out whites for these areas. So we're going to go ahead and fix those first. I've already adjusted my exposure where I'd like it before, but on my recovery slider, if I bring it up just a hair, you can pull out that red. I usually don't worry about skies in between trees, things like this. If her dress were blown out, if it was increased this far, which would be really odd, but if it was up that high and the skirt was blown out, or her face or shoulders, I would definitely fix that. If it's in the trees and the sky, it's not a major problem to me. So our recovery slider will pull out those reds. If you ever do not see the red, make sure you've clicked the highlight clipping warning, the white triangle in this corner. If it's not selected, you won't see that. And again, on the blacks, or the left side, you'd see blue. I was having problems with the black areas. Okay. So the few things that I do on there is I adjust my white balance. You can see how the photo was actually shot. It's fairly cool. Auto will warm it up a bit. You're welcome to click through each individual white balance preset to see which one fits your taste the most. Remember, each screen is going to show it a little bit different. But you can also use your custom sliders to tweak that just a hair more. You can see the blue colors come out on the left-hand side of the spectrum. Oops. Or far to the right, you'll get more yellows and oranges. The bottom slider will adjust your green levels and magenta. If you happen to see you have a little bit extra of one of those colors, you go ahead and tweak your custom settings after you've chosen your preset. But we're going to go with auto. So that's the first thing that I do is my white balance. I make sure that my white balance is dead on. Camera Raw is the easiest place to adjust white balance. It's a little bit more difficult once you pull it into Photoshop. Okay. The next slider I work on is exposure, which is your overall light and dark. In camera, we are looking at the grid on the bottom of our screen, and we want to make sure that we have the correct exposure. Sometimes that's not the case, and we're a little bit too light or a little bit too dark. Exposure will adjust that in a raw file all the way across the board over the entire photo. Again, recovery is for the red blinkies, for the white blown out areas. But as you'll notice, the farther to the right we get, the less contrast we have in our picture as well. So I'm going to be careful with that. Okay. Fill light, I don't generally use, but that's going to pull out all of the dark areas and those shadows. You'll lose a lot of contrast that way. The blacks are the opposite. You can take away from the black areas. Try to add more to the black areas this way. I usually don't mess with that slider. The overall brightness of your photo and your overall contrast. Usually these photos will start out right about in here as a raw file, and I'll increase it to around 40. But I do all of my fine adjustments in Photoshop because I can get a lot more technical. I don't have to cover the entire photo. Vibrance and clarity, or excuse me, vibrance and saturation, I'll bring those up by about 5 plus 5. They'll start at 0 originally. The only other thing that I will do in Camera Raw is to click and drag across my photo to zoom in. The only time I do this is if I'm shooting at such a high ISO that I know I'm going to have grain. In this case, I've shot at ISO 100, so I shouldn't have any grain. But what you'll notice is my picture is a hair blurry. I was at f4 and quite a ways away, which resulted in camera shake. I'm also at 1/80th of a second. So I got a little bit of blur on this one. I wouldn't actually end up keeping this photo just because of that reason. But if I had any noise at 100%, or even a little bit higher, 144, you'd be able to start seeing grain in this picture. And what we see here is actually just blur. It's blur, it's not noise, it's not grain. So from this point, I make sure again that all of my photos are selected. I can open images to bring them into Photoshop, or I can push done. And once I've hit done, it will automatically make those changes on the raw files in my bridge without having to go to any type of save or save as option. The changes are automatically saved in Bridge.